Good morning. So what I want to talk about is about the spiritual awakening. And once the spiritual awakening is initiated or ignited within you, it is irreversible. It isn't something that you can, even if you want to, turn off and go backwards. You can either accelerate your spiritual awakening, or you can prolong it. And you can prolong it for the rest of your life as well. And that's by fighting against the pain that comes up, because an inherent part of the spiritual awakening is that you are going to feel pain. Pain is going to arise. There is in change, there is pain. And letting go of old false beliefs, there is pain. And it is an inherent part of the spiritual awakening. But once you are woken up, once something ignites that spiritual awakening or path to enlightenment, it's like once you see the light, you can't unsee it. It's like once you're in a knowing that there is a higher existence, and once you start finding the falsities within yourself, everything within us is like a network. Everything is connected. So it's like once you hit up against, it's almost like an alcoholic hitting up against their rock bottom, and all of a sudden something switches, and it's like you go through a portal and you come out the other side, and it's spiraling. And you keep going around and keep finding more and more falsities, and everything is connected to everything. All of your wounds and all of the places that you are healing within yourself are all connected to the same core wounds. So once it is ignited and once you start on this path, it is irreversible. You can't stop it. And once you start finding things and fixing them within yourself, the feeling is so good. It feels like you're cleansing yourself. That one thing pulls to another, one thing pulls to another, one thing pulls to another. And once you begin to have awareness, the awareness takes over, and the awareness begins to be within itself. It's like you can't go back to sleep. You can't forget what you know. And it's really like an allowance, allowing it to unfold. The more you are in allowance and surrender into it, it's like leaning into the pain. Somebody wrote to me yesterday about leaning into the pain, and it really does feel like that. It feels like you're leaning into it. You're allowing the pain to go through you, and as the pain goes through you, everything that is at that pain level starts coming up to the surface. So when you're trying to grasp and hold on and not allow the pain, or you're fighting against, it's like being pulled downstream, and you're grasping as hard as you can at the grass roots on the side not to go. But when you allow it, it will take you in its natural course, because everything, just like when you're watching these videos that I'm doing, each video is based on previous knowledge. Each video is like an inherent of the previous videos. If you watch a video of mine from last year, or from when I first started recording, I don't think it's been a year, but if you watch a video from even 6 months ago, you see how much I have evolved, and you see how much more calm I am, how much less I am trying to control it. I'm learning how to release control. Because I realize that this journey is I'm being done. I am in control, but not in control at the same time. It's a paradox of sorts. I'm wrapping this water. It's the living water. It's water from the Jordan River. That was my daughter's product, and she gave it to me. She handed me over her whole business because she has other businesses, and so I sell them on Amazon. I'll put a link for them below. That's what I'm doing right now. I've been making videos all morning. I just sat down to work, and then the inspiration for this came up. So I'm doing more videos than actual work this morning. But I have learned to release in that. I've learned that providence isn't always directly, and this is something that my twin / guide taught me, is that providence isn't always directly connected to the amount of effort that I put into it. That doing my God's work sometimes is more important. And this morning I feel like the gates are open. There's some kind of portal that's open, and I keep on getting downloads and inspiration. And so I'm just allowing myself to flow with it, because there are mornings that it doesn't come and it's not open. And there's mornings that I'm completely in my ego and disconnected and poor me and all of that. So I'm allowing it as it comes. So a few years ago, when I was coming out of that deep depression that I had this enlightenment, and it was a complete, like, I felt like light shooting through me. And I walked around afterwards in like this euphoria for a few months, because it was so dramatic and so intense and so life-changing. And that whole event happened in stages. It happened in 3 stages over a weekend when I went to a festival. And it was the stage of the first like boom that I got was that I am, there were 3. One was that I am accepted and I'm perfect just as I am, and the second one is that I was connected to everything and to everybody. And then I had the big one with the light shooting through me, and I just felt like, it was just like full body orgasm. I don't know how you would even explain it. It's bigger than that. It's like the connection to everything, but just the pure light. I was pure light energy. And I started reading, and I read somewhere that, and this was a few years ago, that that spiritual enlightenment, when you're on the path of spiritual enlightenment, is irreversible. But at the time, I took it, but I didn't understand it. And now I completely understand it, because when you start getting on this path of enlightenment and you start uncovering things, first of all, everything within us is connected. So once you uncover one thing, it's pulling the door open for another 10 things. And then once you uncover each of those 10 things, it's pulling the door open for another, and you just keep getting deeper and deeper and deeper. As deep as you can go, it keeps going until you get to your core wounds, which are the wounds of abandonment. And a lot of the self-work, when you go down the rabbit hole into yourself, you find that it's sitting in a very, very early childhood, that you have had these beliefs basically for as long as you could remember. Because when you follow the chain backwards, when did I feel this before? When you have like this feeling come up in you of unworthiness or being shy, or maybe I shouldn't say that because what is somebody going to think, or I don't know if I want to wear this, are people looking, and you start pulling your clothes down, or any place where you're not feeling completely outward, where you're being. What I realized, one of the things that I realized early on in this spiritual path, is that I was always, I was afraid of social meetings, because I was always like, what is people thinking of me, and what is this going on, and who's looking at me? And I was so in that stress of, what do I say? If I say this, what are people going to think? I was so far in that I wasn't present in the moment, and I wasn't noticing that 99% of the people are in that mode. And then I started becoming curious about other people, because once you get over and you start realizing that you are just the same and even with every other person on the planet, you were born even. We were all born naked, came into the world with our own talents, our own abilities, our own capabilities, our own potentials, which are infinite, by the way. We have infinite. I did a video about potential. I don't remember what it was called, but hopefully potential is in the title, because a lot of these videos I talk about so many different things. But it was about how each moment carries in it, and each person carries in them infinite amount of potential. Every moment has more and more potential in it. I did a couple of videos on that, I'm sure. I'm talking about one that I did earlier on about how we are infinite amount of potential, and there's so many different routes that we can go down. It all depends on our conditioning and what we believe that we are capable and where we move our focus to. So that's in a nutshell. And I realized that once I got over and understood that I am worthy, I am worth as much as everybody else. There is, you know, if somebody is judging me, it's because they're judging me according to their own sketchbook of how people are supposed to be, and that there is no way that, you know, that if anybody knew me and knew everything that I had gone through to get to the point that I am now, they wouldn't judge me in a negative way. They would understand me. They would rejoice with me. They would have compassion towards me. They wouldn't be judgmental over me, because I know that every single thought that I have and every insecurity and everything that I have done, I've always done the best that I could in any situation. And when you really look back on your life, you can see that in yourself as well. That even if you didn't do very good and the choices that you chose were not bad, or you have become addicted to something, or it's all for a reason. It's all because of these core wounds that make us believe that we are incomplete, or make us believe that we are less worthy than others, or that we can't cope with things that come up. So we start drowning them in these addictions or consoling things, such as smoking, such as drinking, or such as any kind of behavior that we're addicted to. There's all sorts of addictions and all sorts of things. And when you really look at your addictions, they are a cope mechanism. They allow you to cope because you don't feel whole, because you have these core wounds of feeling unworthy, or feeling like you can't cope without these things, or abandonment, or trust issues, or feeling completely alone, so you want to drown it out. Or, you know, and you can look in the physical world and you can see, I'm in a bad marriage, I don't like my job, I feel unfulfilled, I don't feel like I'm completing myself. So it's difficult to do the self-work, so you start taking outs of drinking, smoking, whatever it is. But when you really get on this path and this journey, one of the things that I realized is that my feelings of inadequacy was what was causing also my addictions, but also my fear of meeting other people, because all of the places that I wasn't accepting of myself, I thought that everybody knew, everybody could see. Nobody else was accepting of me in those places either. Everybody knows all of my faults. And when I realized that everybody is so busy with their own self and their own faults and their own inner workings, and that they don't pay that much attention to me. And just like I thought that everybody else had it figured out, everybody else thought that I had it figured out, you know, especially with the life that I was leading when I was going through my biggest insecurities. I had a business, I had a big house in the suburbs, I had a fancy car, and I was the most insecure that I had ever been. And so I think that I was most far away from my nature as well. You know, the further we get away from our divine self, the more insecure we feel, because we're living a false life. But then I realized that everybody else has their own hang-ups. And even if somebody else is judging me, they're judging me based on their own beliefs of how I should be, which isn't my belief of how I should be anyway. So it's irrelevant to me no matter what. First of all, it's a projection of their own selves and what they believe. And second of all, it doesn't have anything to do with me, because they didn't go through my unique upbringing and what I have gone through in my own life, and they have not seen or completed any of the things that I'm going through. They're going through their own things, and they had their own lives, and they have their own blueprint, and they were raised with their own beliefs of how things should be. It doesn't have anything to do with me. It's a projection of them onto me. And not only is it a projection of them onto me, it's none of their business. And not only, as long as I'm not hurting anybody, that's for sure. But I mean, besides that, it's none of their business, and it really isn't anybody else's business, unless you know, unless it impacts their lives in some way. But and even then, And even then, that's a choice that they allow me to impact their life, you know, other than my children and you know, people that are close to me in that way. Even a spouse is allowing me to affect their lives. They're allowing me in. They have choice. And so when I realized all of that, I started becoming more curious as to other people's experiences, because I started realizing, when I started getting over my own insecurities, I started realizing that everybody is riddled with these insecurities, and everybody's worried about what I'm thinking about them more, and I was worried about what they're thinking of me, and it kind of makes like this disconnect between people. I don't truly see them because I'm so worried about me, and they don't truly see me because they're so worried about them. And especially if you're judging, you're really not seeing the other person and any person. And then I really thought about it, because when I was having these thoughts and these realizations, I was really heavy. I was fat. I was 240 kilograms. So do the math. It's more than twice as much as I weigh right now. So if you do the math, I think, I don't remember how many pounds it is, but it's well over 300 pounds, I think. It was 140 kilo. So when I was having these thoughts, and I was thinking about, you know, that people are going to be judging me because I'm so fat, they're going to think that, and then I thought to myself, yeah, but if they really knew me, if they really, really knew me, they would see that I arrived to this because of reasons, because of my insecurities, and because of, you know, I was drinking, and I was drinking because of, you know, when you start doing the math inside, I was drinking because of my insecurities, because of the situation that I was in, because of different things that I was going through, emotional things. And then I started thinking to myself, well, if anybody is going to judge me from the outside because of my weight, without asking me what's going on, why are you like this, then it's their judgment of me. And it's not a fair judgment or fair assessment in any case, because nobody else can assess me from the outside. They would have to come in and actually know what the inner workings are that caused all of this, and not even then judge. Then you can be compassionate and understand. So it kind of allowed me to let go of the need for other people's approval, because other people's approval or unapproval or misapproval or whatever you call it, has nothing to do with me. It has to do with them. It has to do with how they believe people should be. What other people believe how people should be has nothing to do with me. They were brought up in a complete different household, a complete different way, had complete different life experiences, have complete different belief system. They are a different person, coming from a different line of being, of generation after generation after generation of conditioning into believing the way that they believe. So it has absolutely nothing to do with me. And I started realizing more and more that, you know, people have expectations of me being in a certain religion, or expectations of me to act a certain way, or, you know, as long as I'm okay with myself and I feel like I am, you know, as long as I'm not hurting anybody else or forcing anybody else to, and this is coming back to thoughts about my twin, trying to determine anybody else's outcome in their life, or trying to make them go down a certain route, or condition them to satisfy what I think or what I need. You know, that how conceited is that, to think that I have it all figured out when I know that I don't have it all figured out. To think that I have it all figured out enough to control another person, you know, really the focus should just be on me. And then I was able to really release the need for others' approval. So it's release the need for others' approval. And that comes down to self-acceptance and being able to be whole within yourself. And getting back to the main subject, that a spiritual awakening is irreversible. You cannot reverse spiritual awakening and enlightenment once you start getting on the path. And so the best thing that you can do for yourself is to do the spiritual work and accelerate the spiritual awakening. Make it go fast so that because every layer that you open and every misbelief that you repair within yourself brings you closer back to your core self and to who you are, and closer to a place of bliss and heaven on earth, and being able to live this life experience during this life experience as a spectator, as a pure essence, as your pure essence, being able to have the most satisfying, beautiful experience. Every layer that you let go, you get closer to your core vibration and closer to pure love and acceptance of others, and release and not fighting against, and allowing, and you become accepting and loving of others, and then others become accepting and loving of you. Whereas if you are always trying to, make others do as you think they should do, you're just creating resistance, and you're creating a barrier between you. You're creating, as I'm coming back to thoughts of my twin, because that is kind of what I did by bringing any kind of expectation into the relationship. I feel like I'm doing a lot of my shadow work now. I've gotten to like these core wounds, and letting go of the core wounds. It's like you have this core wound, and there were so many things, so much garbage built up on it, so that you don't have to touch the core wound, because there's so much pain in that core wound that you live your life covering it with more and more layers of junk, more and more layers of beliefs that allow you not to look into it, addictions that allow you not to have to deal with it. And the more false beliefs that are built on it, the more teetery the building becomes. It's like building a massive skyscraper on a faulty base. And at some point, everything starts breaking down. At some point, you get so far away from the core, so far away from your true self, in avoiding your core wounds, because you don't want, they live in your shadows, they live in your subconscious, and they don't want light on them because it's so painful to have to go through them. But once you go through them, you can release them, and then the pain is gone. It's gone. So it's worth going through the pain, but a lot of times we can't find the access because it's so far buried under so much junk. We can't find access to how to get there and heal it. We don't even know what it is. What is it? We can feel the pain coming up, and we can feel these places, but we don't know what it is. And in that, you need to follow the pain. So, and how do you follow the pain? Anytime that you feel like a come up in you, a discomfort, try to figure out, what's that discomfort? Why am I feeling that discomfort? When did I feel that discomfort the first time when I was a child? What is causing the discomfort? And you start getting very, very curious, rather than avoidant. You start getting curious about your own emotions. And once you start this process, you'll see that it is irreversible, because everything is connected to everything. Once you start pulling the string doesn't stop pulling. One thing, you pull out one thing, it puts light on another. You pull out that thing, it puts light on another. Once you start unraveling, once the building crashes down to the ground, it's crashed down to the ground, and now you have all the parts, and you have to deal with it. You have to go through everything that you have believed till now and recheck it. So what do? As children, we have these experiences and traumas, and based on these experiences or things that we're taught or consensuses, we base our belief system on that. We start building beliefs, but we start building beliefs before we're adults, before we have any life experience. Our parents tell us something, and they're like gods to us, so we believe it. And we put this into our belief system as a knowing. But our parents, now that we're at the age of our parents, or even older than our parents were when they taught us these beliefs, we see that we're all still learning, and we're all still in the process. So you can see that nothing is absolute, and that a lot of these beliefs that we have within us are false. And we haven't, and we were so young when we adopted these beliefs that we didn't even have the life experience to make the judgment ourselves if we're going to believe what they taught us or not, especially a lot of us that have been upbringings that have religion in them, or lots of guilt, or extreme ways of thinking. And so we go through our lives with these beliefs that we never checked out ourselves. So then once this whole building of belief system topples to the ground, all of a sudden we're left with a shattered of all of our old beliefs. And now we have to pick at them and start picking out, okay, is this true? Is this not true? You're automatic. It's like you're thrown off of automatic. You get out of automatic zone. And all of a sudden, everything that comes up, there's an automatic, and then you're like, wait a minute, what do I really think about this? And then you start going through the motions and fixing the beliefs. And when you have this like uncomfortable feeling coming up in you, like this, I don't want to do that. One of the ones, I can give you an example of myself. When we first came back to Israel, my son was 4, and he wanted me to take him to the park. And there's a park here. We moved to this settlement. It was a different house, but we moved to this settlement. And he wanted me to take him to the park. And I had this like I didn't want to take him to the park. And I started telling him, why don't you go to the park yourself? You're a big boy. You just walk up to the park. Here in Israel, it's a lot different than in the States. Here, kids can run to the park. They play in the streets. They go back and forth in between houses. It's very, very different. And so we do have like other concerns, but kids, and that was one of the big pulls for me to bring my children back to Israel, is that kids have a lot more freedom here. It's not like in the States you have to make play dates, and you make a play date for 3 days down the line or a week down the line. Here in Israel, the kids go out and they go from house to house. So the kids, they'll come running in and go into the room and do something, and then they'll all run out and they'll go to a different house, or they'll all go on a bike ride down to wherever. It's much more free here. There's much more freedom for children. It's a much safer place in that way. And so I told my son, just go up to the park. His friends are up there. He can go up there and play. And then he was begging me, like, I don't want to go by myself, and come with me. And I was thinking to myself, I brought my kids back here to Israel to have like a different life experience, a different childhood. And why am I not willing to go up with him to the park? What is this feeling? I had this feeling in me, and I started thinking, what is this feeling that I'm having? And then I realized what it was. It was me not wanting to have, I was really fat, and I had come back, and I came back to a settlement where my parents live and where I grew up. And when I was younger, I wasn't fat. And so I came back from the States like super fat. And I didn't want anybody to see me. I was embarrassed of myself. And then I started thinking, and then I started having the thoughts, well, why am I embarrassed of myself? Well, I'm embarrassed of myself because they're going to judge me. And then I started having the feeling, well, if they judge me, it's because they don't know what I've gone through. If they knew what I had gone through to get to this point, then they wouldn't judge me. They would see they would have compassion towards me. And so that's the self-work. And then I started thinking, well, wait a minute, where is this? So then I shouldn't be afraid of what other people think of me. It doesn't matter what they think of me. And besides, they're probably more concerned with what I think of them too. And so then I started having those thoughts. And then I started thinking, well, when as a child was the first time that I ever had a feeling like this? When was it? And so then I started going back into my childhood, and I found a moment, and it doesn't have to be the first time that you ever felt this. It just has to be far enough away from your adult self to where that you can separate yourself from that child and kind of look in at that child from a different perspective, from an adult perspective. All of a sudden you are looking back into the time when you made these agreements with yourselves and collected these beliefs about yourself and about the way that you are from a completely different perspective, from an adult perspective, from a perspective of somebody who has already gone through a lifetime of events and has enough knowledge and experience to judge situations more knowledgeable. And so I saw myself in a situation when I was a little girl where I got in really big trouble, and how I felt insecure and unworthy, and how that grew from that point. And I was able to just see that little girl and just have complete compassion for that little girl and say, wow, that little girl didn't have any, it wasn't any of her fault. And I was able to be completely forgiving of myself in that situation. I realized that I had been holding that grudge against myself from when I was 4. I had been holding a grudge against myself wrongfully. And so I was able to release it. And I was also able to, in that, see the pattern of how these internal beliefs work, and see that all of these feelings of inadequacy that I have within myself and unself-acceptance was false. Because I could see, well, if that is a moment that defined me and what I agree and what I feel about myself, then there are other moments that define all of my insecurities. And sometimes you try to go back to, you follow the line. Like I see it like as a chain link. Well, why am I feeling this way? Oh, I'm feeling this way because of this. But why am I feeling this? Oh, I'm feeling this way because of this. But why am I feeling this? And you start following it backwards, and it always leads, like just so you know where you're going with these chains, it always leads to a place where you feel you're inadequate and you are insecure in yourself. Even if you feel outwardly like you are confident, as long as there are places in you, and a lot of times we have this false confidence. There are people that have like narcissists, have false confidence, because instead of going inward, they're going outward. So they're like, I'm better than you, and then blaming people for all sorts of things. But that is also insecurity. That is the need to lash out and make everybody else seem smaller so that you can feel okay within yourself. But when you are at your base level, when you are at your core, and when you are at your knowing that you are worthy, there is only compassion. There's compassion for those that lash out. There's compassion for those that are victims. There's compassion all the way around, because you have seen in yourself, you see that everybody's behaviors are caused by it. It's a cause and effect, and you know that if you take that behavior and you follow it back downwards, you follow it into a place of that person feeling insecure within themselves and unworthiness. So anytime you're following these places of know that it leads to a place that you feel unworthy, and then you can always go back and anchor at, when I was born, I came in even. I came in, maybe I came into circumstances, my parents were poor, my parents were this, or society was this, or the neighborhood that I grew up to. You came into all sorts of conditions and all sorts of conditioning. People with good will, good intentions come in and condition you in a way, and you have to be conditioned somehow. So you can't really even say, why did you condition me? You can't blame your parents, and you can't blame your grandparents, and you can't blame society, because everybody is conditioned. And in knowing that, you can release yourself. You are a free entity. Everybody is conditioned. Everything came to be by cause and effect. So you can have compassion towards an entire nation without blame. There's a war going on now, and there is, who's to blame? Or you can say, oh, they broke in and they're terrorists, and these people did that, and they were provoked, and they've been put down for so many generations, and this is their land, and this is their land, and everybody has the right. And you can just keep on going back and forth, and you're never going to find a right from wrong. We are all conditioned, and everybody that is in this condition, and you can only feel compassion, like these poor souls are lost. These poor souls are not going inwards and releasing themselves from all of these ways of thinking and the conditioning that is binding them. And they're out losing their souls, and there's so much life loss for nothing, for vain, for vanity, for nothing, for falsity, for ego, for archetypes, for and you can also look at everything vaster, and you can see that in 100 years from now, any of those people that lost their lives now would not be alive in any case. So you can also, go out and get perspective in that way. I'm not saying, it's painful, but there's a lot of different ways to look at this. And you can also look at that the old has to collapse within itself for the new to be born. It's always that way. Everything is constantly in change and constantly collapsing and being reborn, and collapsing and being reborn. So this whole thing started from me stating, and the subject, the main subject of this video is that once you start on the spiritual awakening, then it is irreversible. Once you start understanding yourself and you start digging and you start opening things up, it is inherent that more things are going to open up, and it's going to keep on going. And the more you will let go and allow, the more you come into your natural state, and it accelerates the spiritual awakening and the enlightenment. And you become more enlightened and more enlightened and more enlightened. And until you become complete light when you shed this body. So everything, there isn't really any kind of death. There is a continuous continuation. Even in my body is made up of water and the elements of the earth and other people that have been buried in the earth and went into plants, that went into birds, that went into generation after generation after generation of circulation and cycles. And so when you see that, and when you completely understand that, everything becomes so small and irrelevant. My own personal pain that I'm going through, I can get stuck in the mind loops, which is in the ego, or I can pull myself out of it and look for the reason behind it and search for the higher good and search for what I can do with this in order to spread more knowledge and more knowing and enhance others' experiences and raise the vibration of the earth and the understanding, the spiritual awakening of the whole. And so this spiritual awakening really is irreversible once you get on the path. Once you start tasting the sweetness of the self-work, it's one thing pulls another thing out. One thing pulls another thing out. It's like those napkins that you start pulling out, and one pulls out the other, one pulls out the other, and you can never stop. Once it starts, you can't stop within yourself. It's also the sweetness of it is addictive. And in any case, it is like being done to you, not, we are on this continuation of time, and this continuation of time, and there is a divine guidance, and there is a divine intelligence, and we are meant to be on this path. So we can either accelerate it so that we can, which is leaning into the pain, leaning into the knowledge. At the same time, it's kind of finding a balance, because you also have to kind of let go, because you can't try to force anything, but you can get tools that can help you along the way. You can get understandings like this video of what is going on, so that you get a picture of it, so that you can understand it and recognize it as it goes, and you can find patterns. Because along the spiritual awakening, we are finding constantly patterns. And once you find a pattern, you can start applying things to that. You can start taking the pattern and applying it, but you can also see where things are out of line. It's just like in nature that this morning I did a video with the flower and a mockingbird came. And a mockingbird, it was like one of those little honey, I think it was a mockingbird. It came to the flower, and then a bee came to the flower, and then an ant came to the flower. And you can learn so much just from the flower. The flower comes and it brings its full expression, and then whatever needs to find the flower finds the flower. So through nature we find the signs and synchronicities, and we can start finding patterns, and we can apply them to ourselves. Like we are the flower. We bring ourselves into expression like I'm doing in this video, and whatever needs to find it will be magnetized, and you can just trust the divine. All you need to do is bring yourself back to your pure essence, and then all the rest will fall in place around you. And so the spiritual awakening really is irreversible. You can't go backwards on it. You can't unsee what you see. You can't unknow what you know. You can fight against it, but then it's just perpetuating the pain. It's because every time that you allow yourself to go through the pain, you find the falsity, because pain is a go-through, pass-through emotion. It's not a sit-in emotion. It's something that has come to teach you something. So it's like a guiding emotion. Your emotions guide you in any case to where you want to be. And they're guiding you back home to yourself, into pure acceptance of yourself and pure love, which is the universal language of cause and effect. It's just being. It's just being. When you go out into nature, you notice that everything just is. There are no emotions attached to the flower growing. It's just the flower doing. It's just being. It's just an allowance. It's just being pure consciousness, coming back to soul level. Coming into the now and being a witness, being a conscious, being curious. Curiosity brings you into the now. Allowing everything to pass through you and not getting stuck within you, and you not getting stuck outwardly on things as well. Just allowing the flow to flow. Okay, so I think that I have summed all this up. So I really appreciate you guys watching, and I like this video. Thank you.